Hello everyone, we're just saying hello to each other in the shrine room.
Select feed.
There's 5 including me, and so it's nice to see people, so welcome. And online we've got a good number, I think 22. So welcome to everyone who's joined online. It's really nice to see you all. Hi Tiffy, everyone who's waving, and Jonathan's turned sideways, but he's there. And Will, hi there, Barbara, Liam, Liliana, Jana, Yasha, Mark, of course, who's going to screen share for me. Unfortunately, Randula can't be here. She's caring for a relative who's unwell, and she's had to go to the hospital, and I think that maybe they've been released from hospital and she's now taken them home and looking after them, so she wasn't able to join us. But all being well, she'll need it next week. So anyway, I'm not Randula, but I'll do my best. So. We'll start by lighting the candles. I'll chant from Dedication of Offerings with 3 refuges, the 5 precepts. That's the way we begin in the usual way. And then lead a meditation, give some guidance, some short talk, and hopefully plenty of time for questions and reflections that you might be stimulated to ask. So we'll start by chanting from page 18. Yoso bhagava araham samma sambuddho svakato yena bhagavata dhammo supatipanno yassa bhagavato savaka sangho tammayam bhagavantam Sadhammam sasangham vinehi sakkare yatarakam aropitehi abhipujayama sadhuno bhante bhagava suchira parinibhutokmi Achima Janatanukam Pramanasa Ine Sakare Dugatapanna Karakute Atiganhatu Amhakam Vigaratam Nitaya Sukaya Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhimaneni. Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namassami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sangham Namami. So if we turn to page 128. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. To the Buddha I go for refuge. To the Dhamma I go for refuge. To the Sangha I go for refuge. Dutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. For the second time to the Buddha I go for refuge. For the second time to the Dhamma I go for refuge. For the second time to the Sangha I go for refuge. Tatiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. For the third time to the Buddha I go for refuge. For the third time to the Dhamma I go for refuge. For the third time to the Sangha I go for refuge. Anatipata Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature. Adinatana Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. Kami Sumi Chachara Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct. Musavada Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying. Suramayamagga Kamadatana Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs due to carelessness. Imani pancha sikkhavadani silena sugatim yanti silena bhoga sampada silena niputim yanti tasma silam visodhani. These are the 5 precepts. Virtue is the source of happiness. Virtue is the source of true wealth. Virtue is the source of peacefulness. Therefore let virtue be purified. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. It's such a simple formula, the 3 refuges and 5 precepts. The 5 precepts were about establishing morality. Basis for simplifying our lives. Basis for calming the mind. The 3 refuges. They're not the external things that we can see, the Buddha, the statue, the Dhamma, and written or spoken texts, teachings, the Sangha, the monastic Sangha in that sense. That's the normal way of looking at it. These 3 external signs. The 3 refuges are to be embodied in our practice. In Buddhist practice, there's no difference really between a sitting, meditation, standing, walking, lying down, meditation and life. Life is a meditation. Meditation is life. So our meditation practice is about bringing the 3 refuges in within us. The Buddha is within us if we let it in. The Dhamma is within us if we let it in. The Sangha is within us if we let it in. as we establish our posture, we're establishing the posture of the Buddha. It's our Buddha posture. We're not trying to become a statue, but simply to find an upright, balanced, awake and aware posture that supports awakened awareness. That this is an upright, relaxed posture. That's our Buddha posture. The Buddha on the shrine is a guide. He sits upright. Shoulders back, the back straight, chin tucked in, perfectly balanced. And our bodies are human, they're alive. We have to discover that for ourselves. How does it feel, this body? How can we find that point of balance? Notice how it's not something that's fixed. It might feel upright, but it's always moving, always out of balance, being brought back into balance. So we begin our meditation with noticing the posture. But not just noticing the posture, bringing the Buddha into our posture, embracing the posture of the Buddha. However that is for us. We bring mindfulness to the breath. We bring Buddha to our breath. You could say we're breathing like a Buddha when we're mindful. It's a direct connection to the Buddha's breath because of this teaching that's been passed down all 2,500 years, pointing to that awareness, that mindfulness, that possibility of noticing simple inhalation, exhalation. Or they're pointing out there is such a thing as mindfulness of breathing, something It's available to us all. We can notice the posture, we can notice the breath. We can notice the whole body. The experience of sitting is like this. What is the experience of sitting? You have to inquire, find out for yourself. You can't find out by reading it in a book or believing what somebody else tells you. What is the experience of sitting? We have to trust in our own ability to see for ourselves. We have to trust in the Buddha that's within us to see for ourselves. We might judge the body, saying it should be like this, it shouldn't be like that. We might not like how it feels. We might be able to accept it the way it is. It's much harder to accept the mind the way that is. We can easily judge mental content, things that arise in the mind. And think we should do this and that to manipulate it, to get rid of what we don't like or don't think should be there, to get something that we would like and think should be there. Maybe we think we don't want to be disturbed by thoughts, we want to have a calm mind. Mindfulness is noticing that our preferences can be noticed. We don't need to follow. Even though it seems logical to try to do this or that, we really don't learn the way the mind is, the nature of the mind, and we interfere. We don't trust that things will cease in their own time. If we don't buy into them, whatever it is, we just observe. Thoughts, emotions are just that, just what they are. If we don't add anything to them, they'll just run their course and come to an end. If we know them, that's enough. We can learn a lot from our resistance. We can ask, what's that about? Just let it be. Let it go. whatever mental creation comes into the mind, we can just know that's what it is. Something that the mind has created. It's what the mind does. If we don't add anything to it, just let it be as it is. There's no energy added. It will change. Inevitably, it will cease. And we can notice the ending. Perhaps even rest in that ending of things. That's what it's like when things come to an end. Doesn't mean they won't start again, but we've recognized that when we let them be, they'll cease by themselves. We'll realize that even if the mind creates something else, it's not the same. And that too is something that we can let be and let when it's called, from watch it cease. Not because we're setting up the condition, we're saying it has to come to an end, we're just observing and seeing what happens and discovering the nature of things to cease. When we understand whatever is created will cease, and we don't give it any special value. We know it has no special significance. We don't add anything to it. Eventually we just turn our mind inwards and focus on awakened awareness. That's enough, simply to notice, sustained in a sustained way, that sustained awareness. Doesn't matter what comes into that field of awareness. It can come and go. It will come and go. But we can sustain the knowing of it, the awareness of it, whatever it is. It's resting in the center of our experience. It doesn't matter what that experience is. Because being present with it is all that matters to us. Sustaining that awareness of the present moment as it is. Being present is enough. I was reflecting on the Triple Jam this evening because it was something which I was thinking about when I was on a retreat at Amaravati at the end of last month. The Triple Gem, the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha. We bow to the Buddha, we bow to the Dhamma, we bow to the Sangha. We bow 3 times when we arrive at the Buddha in the shrine room. We bow 3 times when we leave. When we bow 3 times, it signifies the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. And we know their external form. The Buddha Rupa is in front of us. Rupa means physical. It literally means body. So the Buddha Rupa is the physical form, the statue in front of us. The Dhamma, we know the Dhamma, it's the teachings of the Buddha. We have it in books. We could call it the Word. The Word is the Dhamma. And we know the Sangha. We see in Amaravati, we're very fortunate. We see monastic Sangha, monks and nuns, and we often think of the Sangha as monks and nuns. But it's a very limited way of seeing these the 3 refuges, these 3 external manifestations, because they're easily simply worship, objects of worship, aren't they, if you see them as external? To worship the Buddha, to worship the Word, to worship the Sangha, the monks and nuns. It's easy to do that, to think that's what we're doing. That might not be something that we particularly wanted to come to Buddhism for. It might be something that we see perhaps in Asian countries or Asian people and think, oh, they're just praying or they're just worshipping. If we think that, we don't know, we have no idea what people think. But it is possible, isn't it, to take Buddhism at that level as a devotional practice. And we'll see people bowing. We often call it devotion. But from the real practice, it's not about bowing to the external, but bowing to what's within us. If we're really practicing Buddhism, then we're bowing to the Buddha within us, the Dhamma that's within us, and the Sangha within us too. Because even the Sangha, we think, we might think of these monks and nuns, but if we don't, if we are not Sangha ourselves, if we're not willing to become Sangha for other people, then we're not forming a Sangha. So the Sangha is far wider than just monks and nuns. The Sangha is a lay Sangha. It's the Sangha of practitioners. The Sangha of people committed to practice. That's what this refuge is. The Sangha of those who realised the truth as well. So we're bowing to people that we respect, people that we aspire to become as like them. Because when we see people that we respect, we see them as some. We look and think, "Oh, I'd like some of that. I'd like to be like them, that person." I'd like to have that radiance or that clarity or that way of being. And in those people that we respect, then they are, in a sense, they're our Sangha. But our aspiration is to be like them. So we join them. We when we bow to the Sangha, we're really bowing to our own willingness to join the Sangha, to become Sangha. It's like if you have some friends and you look at them as simply external friends, but we don't become a friend to that group of friends. We have to be a friend too. Obviously we have, to have friends, we have to be a friend. We can't think of them as simply external to us. We embody that spirit of friendship, and we offer friendship to people. And that's how we bond as a group of friends. So it's the same with it. We bond, if it's like, we offer that ourselves to the Sangha, to our other like-minded people who are following this path. Wherever they are, we're not judging and saying that they are better or worse, or we're equal, but simply be willing to be a part of this group that's developing our practice little by little. And so that's what Sangha is. And so in the same way, what good would this Dhamma be if it was simply the word, when we were worshipping the word? It would be totally meaningless. The Dhamma is only meaningful if it's within us, if we embody the Dhamma, if we bring it into our hearts and bring it to life through our own practice, through our own insight, our own realization. We bring it to life, otherwise it's dead, isn't it? It's just something to worship, something to identify with. And the wonderful thing about Dhamma is the word Dhamma means nature. It's the nature of things. The Buddha chose the word Dhamma to describe his teachings. It already existed. The word meant the way things are, the nature of things. So the Dhamma is describing the nature of things. In other words, that you could say the Buddha's not claiming to be inventing anything. The nature is already there, isn't it? The way things are, the nature of things was there before the Buddha. He didn't invent nature. All he's doing is putting it into words. He's describing what the nature of things are, and then how we can understand the way that nature is. So how can we understand the way things are? How a path so that we can understand it. If you just simply explained it but didn't give us a path to understand it, then it would be just something to believe in, wouldn't it? If you said, it's like this. If you just describe enlightenment without describing the path to enlightenment, it would have been inspiring but useless. So he's pointing to the nature of things and describing how we can realize it for ourselves. And that's how we bring the Dhamma to life. If we don't understand it, if we don't realize the truth for ourselves, it's of no value. So what's really interesting to me is about how does that work? It's because we only understand anything because we already know it. If we didn't know it already, we couldn't see it. It's like, if, in a way, if you saw the colour red, and somebody said that's called red, then you know it already. It's like, you know what red is. It's just, you knew it already. Somebody just gave you a name for it. I can see Carol is there. She's got a red top, a red jumper, and everyone agrees, we all would agree that that was red. But if I didn't know the word, that it was called red, I would still know that that's what it was, even though I hadn't got the name for it. So it's not like it's something that we don't already know. It's just that, well, now we've got a name for it. Now we can, in a way, we don't really. It's like we know it already. It's just that it sort of becomes clear to us. Oh yeah, that's what it is. It's red. We know what it is. Now we can share that understanding with others. We all have an agreement about what it is. Not like the Buddha didn't invent impermanence, he just pointed it out. Didn't invent dukkha. He just showed us how we create it. Yeah. And we create suffering. And then, having understood how we create it, then we can let it go. We can let go of the origin of it, cause of it. We didn't invent anything. We just explained it and showed us. It's not like we didn't have suffering, or we didn't have impermanence, or we didn't have grasping, and we didn't have the ability to let go. It's just that we didn't trust in doing it. I think that's the confidence that comes from that's perhaps where the Buddha is. So the Buddha, when we look at the Buddha's somebody who did it, isn't he? He attained this realization. He's the embodiment of enlightenment. And yet, that's confidence that we see when we see the Buddha, is the self-confidence. That's what really is useful. There's no good if we only had confidence in the Buddha, it would be a kind of prayer. It would be like faith. We'd have faith, but it would be a blind faith. It's self-confidence isn't a blind faith. That's the confidence that not only that the Buddha realized enlightenment, but we can too. And so that's what gives us the confidence to put the Dhamma into practice, to fear it, thinking it sounds good in theory, but I don't know whether it actually leads anywhere, but to put it into practice because we've got enough confidence in the Buddha. Yes, if we have that level of confidence in the Buddha, then we can, if we like, become Buddha, because we embrace that confidence within us. That faith is embodied, and we have that there's nothing that holds us back when it comes to putting the teachings into practice. So we don't have any doubt. That doubt holds us back. The lack of confidence, self-confidence, makes us think, I can't do this. Makes us think something, we have the opportunity to let go, but we think, no, maybe I better hold on. What if I were to let go? Maybe that wouldn't be a good thing. Maybe something will fall. Maybe I'd lose something, and I wouldn't now get it back again. It would become free. And we don't have the confidence to really let go. A lot of fear can come up, and it can hold us back. That lack of confidence to just let go and embrace the teachings and really commit to them, because it's not. I often think it's not like this is a difficult path or a long path. I think I've heard people say, "Oh, it must take many lifetimes," or it must be very, thinking in terms of it's a very long path, very hard work. There's an awful lot to do if we think to purify this mind. It would be really hard. But it's not. It's as hard as we make it, and it's a path as long as it takes, as long as we want it to be. In a sense, we create the obstacles that to ourselves through our lack of confidence, lack of self-confidence. It's like when my daughter, we gave my daughter a bike. She knew she could ride it before she got on it. And she was that kind of person. If we're that kind of person, we know we can do this. We don't have to wait for somebody to tell us it's possible. We just do. We know we can do it. That kind of confidence. But if we don't think we can ride a bike, we know if we think we'll fall off, we'll hurt. That way of thinking, I'll fall off and I'll hurt myself. Yes, certain. We will fall off and we will hurt ourselves. It's inevitable. That's what will happen. It would have, even if we had the confidence that we could ride a bike, we would still fall off and hurt ourselves. But we'd get up and do it again because we knew we could ride it. We know we can ride that bike. We just get on and we do it, however many times and far. But if we think, I'll fall off and I'll hurt myself, we won't even get on it. Because we'll think, no, why would anyone do that? I was mentioning before, I think maybe it was last week or maybe it was somewhere else, that I think it was last week about learning to float, how you can float in the sea and it was Susan who was here that time, and she said in the Mediterranean where she lives, and she goes and you can float very easily, and it's how relaxing that can be. But you have to trust that you can do this. Otherwise, you can't float. It's not possible to float in the water until you have confidence that if you lay back, it's possible that the body has a natural buoyancy and in salty water. So it takes that trust to do it. But if you don't have trust, you struggle and sink. And that's what happens. So that's interesting, the embodiment of the three refuges within us. And that's what we're bowing to. It's not only these external forms, but the embodiment, our ability and our self-confidence that we can do this for ourselves and embody those three refuges. And I'll open that for discussion now. Any reflections and any questions that people have. I should have said the names of the people in the room. There's Stephen, there's Carola, there's Monique and Guy. Dale. I knew it was a short name.
Good evening, Martin. It's Yasha.
Hi, Yasha.
I thank you very much for that, guiding us through the session. I wondered whether you think worshipping and praying are the same thing.
Well, it depends on what you think praying is and what you think worshipping is. What do you think?
Well, I don't think as Buddhists we pray. So I'm presuming that worshipping is not praying.
Yeah, so if you... I'm not saying that no Buddhists ever pray, because I've seen that happen. But
my partner is Buddhist,
yes.
And he prays for 2 or 3 hours a day.
Yes.
So Buddhists certainly do.
Certainly do pray. Yeah. In what sense does he pray?
It's chanting, really.
Oh.
He calls it his prayers.
Oh, right.
But he spends probably an hour in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, just chanting.
Chanting.
Yeah.
And he calls it prayer.
And he calls it prayers. Yeah.
Because when we talk about prayer, the prayer the thing that comes to my mind is praying for something, because that's a kind of Christian idea that you, not only Christian, as many religions, have the idea that you can, if you say or do these certain rituals or pray for certain things, you can get these results. These things will happen to you. So it's a cause and effect thing. And if you want, for example, to be protected and not any harm come to you, you can say a prayer, maybe a chant. It may be a protection chant. There are protection chants in the chanting book, aren't there? In fact, you mentioned earlier how much you like the Metta Sutta. And the Buddha taught monks who were being harassed by tree deities that sutta to chant as a protection. In a sense, you could call it a protection chant, because and what happened was they were pacified. They were troubled. These deities didn't like them in their forest, and they were giving them a hard time. And when they chanted the Metta Sutta, the deities left them in peace. Now, you could say that was a protection chant, because they chanted it to get this result. But on the other hand, you could also say that if they were being these deities were pacified through their loving kindness that they cultivated through chanting a chant about loving kindness. Instead of being, perhaps the monks felt frightened of these deities, they felt less frightened, and that they had this more love instead of fear, and that they responded to that. Who knows? But, that's what you could also explain it that way. But you can pray in Buddhism. That does happen.
And, just sort of relating it to the gentleman's question, I don't think he would call it worship, though.
No.
It's sort of worship suggests that you are looking for some kind of result from something, and the Buddha was a human, and I think he's beyond reach now.
Well, the Buddha's no longer alive, so you can pray to the Buddha, but he's not there.
Yes.
So you won't get any help.
Since my 80th birthday, I go down on my knees and pray that I will be able to stand up again.
Okay, and did it work?
Thank God.
There you are, you see.
Sorry, Carol, you were going to say.
Oh yes, many years ago, Venerable Sila Wimala used to take this class, and during the time my father died, and he said, "I'll pray for him." And I was really surprised.
Right.
He didn't say any more, and I didn't have asked, but that was an example of senior Buddhist praying.
Yes.
So I don't know what he meant,
what
he was doing, but certainly there was some kind of remembrance or goodwill towards the father who died.
Normally do when people die is we chant. That's what. So we have.
He didn't say he'd chant.
He didn't say that. Pray. No, he said pray, but he may have meant pray. He may have meant chant. Yeah. Because at Amaravati, if you'd what you can do is put a card down, and they would dedicate the chanting to the person who's sick or who's died or whatever. Even somebody's birthday, and they would dedicate their chanting to that person. And that's a kind of prayer. If you like to, you could use in an English translation of you could say that's prayer, but it's not prayer as a Christian would understand it.
You could even say that meditation is a kind of prayer.
You could say that, but I wouldn't, because when you use these words like prayer, it's got so much of a Christian connotation to it from my perspective. Or if you were a Hindu, you would have the same. Wherever you come from, if it's a religion that's based on prayer, then you think in terms of praying to something to get help, a deity or something. And Buddhism, if it's understood correctly, isn't like that.
I remember years ago, a young friend of mine, we were talking about Buddhism, and he was saying, but who do you pray to? He was very confused.
Mm.
That was Humphrey.
Mm.
And I said, well, we don't pray to anybody.
No, we don't
the
pray.
two, for him, prayer was praying to. And that had to be, that was what it was.
But yet there is a devotional practice in Buddhism, isn't there? So it's a really interesting question.
Mm.
Yeah, sure.
Martin, it's Jonathan here. Just wanted to add, when I was at Amaravati temple, I just needed more support. So I asked Ajahn, and Ajahn gave me this, tie this white string around my wrists, and then gave me a blessing and put some water over me, and I did find it very helpful. But you know, I guess also Buddhism is about the Eightfold Path. So I mean, prayer, if it's words, I'm not sure that I agree. I'm not sure how that will fit with wise speech or right speech. You know. So yeah, and things like chanting, I think, would be more along the part of. Would that be right mindfulness or right concentration, chanting? How does it all fit in within the Eightfold Path framework to liberation? Martin or anyone else?
If you just take chanting as an example, you can interpret, you can find how that can be applied within the Eightfold Path. It could be taking right understanding, for example. It's not meaningless. These words have a meaning. So we're not chanting. We're not just going yabba 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 yabba. So there's a meaning there. So there's understanding. We can use that as the teachings. Their intention is not harmful. So it's to maybe our intention is to often we chant before we meditate, for example. It's a conditioning thing. So we do the morning chanting, not saying we, who's that? But often people do morning chanting, and it's simply a conditioned exercise prior to meditation. Not just that, but it can be. So it's a conditioning thing. It's the right intention is embodied in that. Then you've got right speech. It's right speech because it's not harmful. So right speech is not wrong speech, if you like. There's nothing wrong. It's right speech. It's not harmful. It's right in action. It's right in sense of livelihood. It's whatever. We're not making a livelihood out of it, but then there's effort, mindfulness, concentration. So in terms of effort, it's the effort to sustain our attention and be mindful of what we're doing, and that can lead to concentration. I mean, think your friend who's chanting for
about 3 hours a day.
3 hours a day. That's about concentration, isn't it? As much as anything.
Yes. And it has to be the first hour in the morning. It has to be before midday, and the 2 hours has to be after midnight.
Oh, goodness.
Right. Wow.
You know, so he has a very ritualized version of it, really.
Well, there's quite a lot of that's a lot of concentration.
Yeah.
To sustain that, and there's a lot of I think I could see that within the Eightfold Path. It fits quite well.
Has the gentleman told you as to why he needs to concentrate at those times?
To what?
Why is it that he needs those time limitations?
The time.
Yes.
Oh, at those times. Okay.
I'm not really sure, but I think it's cultural. He's Burmese originally, and I think those timings bear a connection with what he was brought up doing in Burma. So I think it's a cultural, probably maybe a cultural addition.
Right.
Maybe being unfair, but that's the impression I have. I mean, I haven't actually asked him, why do you do it that way? So
Well, can you ask? And then
We'll bring it back.
I'll bring it back.
we're all interested to know the answer to that question.
I will ask him. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking the question. Any more observations? Any other questions?
I have a question, if I may. It's
Yeah.
on a different subject.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably doesn't seem like a big thing, but we're having a new kitchen put in,
That's a big
which means we've got workmen in, and I really don't like having workmen in. So I find I've got a very strong resistance to that, and I can observe that resistance in myself. And I'm just wondering if anybody's got any tips how to sort of handle that. It does actually slightly boil over to how I find myself being irritable with my partner, which, well, he's done nothing wrong, but I know it's really coming out of that resistance, but I can see myself speaking in a way I just wouldn't normally. So that's my question, really, whether you or anybody has any suggestions on that, how to handle that resistance.
We had a similar experience having worked in our house for a long time, and regard the builders as actually it's a kind of mental illness. You have an attack of the builders, like you might have an attack of anxiety or depression or madness. It's not, when you see it that way, you know that it's going to pass. Like it's an illness, it arises, it will pass away. Because they draw the interference with your space does all kinds of things to your feelings. It just does. And it's not personal, because having worked on a building site, I know that we did that to anyone's house we went into, even if we didn't mean to. It's massively invasive, very dirty, noisy, and imperfect. And then halfway through, you think of 3 other things you'd like them to do. So I think it's a universal. It's a universal experience. Everyone feels like that. It's not personal. They just do this to you.
Thank you for that.
Is that helpful?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I think it is too.
It sort of puts it in perspective a bit, really.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, it helps, because these things happen in our lives. We get these, this is the builder experience. This is what it's like. Yeah, and then when you can talk to your partner about it and explain, and I think that helps people understand, because it's not, you don't want them to take it personally either. You can't. You wish it wasn't this way, but you do feel this way, and this is when you can talk about it to other people that are affected, they'll understand too, and it helps them.
I think I should do that.
I think you should do.
Thank you.
Anything else? We're getting some lovely questions today.
Martin, it's Jonathan. I'd be interested to hear any reflections on, I mean, today's been lovely to hear about practice and carrying out practice. I guess sometimes if one has trouble going to bed early, I guess there's the person that's here now that's enjoying meditating and doing wise intention, etc. But then there seems to be sometimes someone else within that pops up. It's like, no, I want to watch YouTube or whatever it is till early hours in the morning. So I'd be curious, any sort of thoughts about how to be skillful around that. Mindful that I'm happy I can hear it now, but how do I remind myself when you guys aren't here, my Buddha statue isn't speaking or saying anything? So yeah, what can one do in that situation?
I've heard many people talk about how it's one thing to notice desire, but it's another thing not to follow it. It's you know, it's very difficult. You know, it's very challenging, and it's not necessarily wrong either. The thing, you know, or you know, there's nothing necessarily wrong with whatever it is. You know, we don't. You know, I'm not judging the thing, whatever it is. It could be whether it's good or bad, but you may not even know. For example, you just think, oh, I think I'll just turn on the television before I go to bed. You've no idea what's on the television, so it's not like there's a bad intent. You're not like saying, I want to watch this horrible program that's full of violence. But you turn on this television and you've got this incredible violent program that's come up, which isn't very particularly skillful to watch. And then it's very hard to stop because it's very impulsive, isn't it? And so it can be difficult to stop. But we didn't really intend to get into this position, but now it's happened. And we know it's not a good thing to be doing before we go to bed. And we just, sometimes it takes a partner to say, do we have to watch this? No, actually we don't. Let's turn it off. Let's go to bed. You know, because it's hard to see. You know, on the other hand, I remember a couple of days ago, I did that, and there was something awful on television, and I didn't want to watch it, but I couldn't help kind of prise myself away from it. And in the morning, when I meditated, I had a kind of incredibly insightful meditation, kind of reflecting on this sort of experience that had happened, and some of the content, and that kind of really kind of resonated, and I found that quite remarkably rewarding. That I didn't intend it, you know, but that kind of quite shocked me. You know, I think I can't remember what it was. Oh, I know what it was. It was a film called San Andreas. It was about an earthquake in California. It was completely unrealistic. You know, what was really happening. It was completely mad. You know, but this whole, you know, the totally mad sort of thing. But I then in the morning I had this interesting meditation about catastrophe, about destruction, about the ending of things, because that's what this film was about. It was about destruction, ending, and you know, everything was, all these multi-story buildings were collapsing, and you know. And it led to a very interesting reflection the following day. So it wasn't wasted, although it wasn't intended.
Martin,
Yeah.
there's an American behavioral scientist who is called BJ Fogg, and he has a website called Tiny Habits. And he has a very, very simple methodology for developing what he calls tiny habits, like, you know, just, you know, trivial things like, you know, if you want to perhaps, perhaps kind of eat less, or, you know, or be more sensible, make sure you drink water on time. And it's a very, very simple methodology, which is really easy to follow. And I found it very useful for doing things like reminding myself to, you know, to have moments of mindfulness, or indeed actually start building up towards unpacking some of the more unhelpful habits one gets into, like in my case, drinking far too much tea during the day. But I can recommend it if someone is struggling with just getting past some of those distracting behaviors which get in the way of, you know, having a fulfilling life. It's very good. So the chap's called BJ Fogg. I don't know what the B and the J stand for, but his surname's Fogg. And his website's called Tiny Habits. And it's just a little simple methodology. I can recommend it.
Is it FOGG?
Yeah, as in fog with an extra G. Yeah, double foggy. Yeah, so.
Very foggy.
Yeah, I can recommend it if it's and I've found it useful in the past just for little things in your life that you want to get rid of. It's quite useful.
Thanks, Liam. Yeah, thank you, because it's really helpful that sometimes we can pick tools. There are tools that may not be. There's lots of tools out there. They're not necessarily come with a label called Buddhism, but they can really help. Yeah, that's good. So I think we're coming towards time to chant the Metta Sutta. We said we were going to do the Metta Sutta. It was by special request. So we've got to as to pacify the tree devas.
Pacify the builders.
The builders. So as to pacify the builders. It might work. It's 37, page 37 in English. Now let us chant the Buddha's words in loving kindness. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive. Page 39. Scroll on a little bit there. Let none deceive another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. So now if we could go to the closing homage, I think it's probably on page 19, let's guess. Or 16 perhaps. 16. That will do. Araham
Samma Sambuddho Bhagava, the Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one, Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivademi. I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One.
Swakratu
Bhagavata Dhammo, the teaching so completely explained by him. Namassami, I bow to the Dhamma.
Supatipanno
Bhagavato Savaka Sangho, the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well. Sangham Namami, I bow to the Sangha.
Thank you everyone for joining this evening. Randula, all being well, will be leading it next week. So, hope to see you then.